Just when you start to count out the 2022 New York Mets, they find a way to once again answer the bell and prove why this is one of the greatest teams in franchise history. Eduardo Escobar with the game of his life, 5 RBIs, all of them late to bring the Mets back from the brink. What a game we had to discuss on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. What a night for the New York Mets. Early on in their game against the Marlins, it felt like the season was coming to an end to a certain extent. What I mean by that is you just have watched this team, and there's been all of these performances against sub 500 teams that have just left you wondering what's going on in September. Why are they coming up short? They should have this division in the bag, and there's still a lot of games left to play here. You still got a big series against the Braves, another against the Nationals. Anything can happen, but you just haven't seen the never say die Mets lately. And it was a lifeless effort early on in this game. Taijuan Walker gives up a 2-run homer to Brian De La Cruz on just a terrible pitch. I mean, he was doing nothing with his splitter in that at bat. And the fact that they went fastball to De La Cruz there gave him something he could hit, ended up being right out over the heart of the plate, and he put one in the seats. You're sitting there, you're like, okay, here we go again, 2-0, Mets are down. And the way the offense has looked, and especially against Jesus Luzardo tonight, it just didn't seem like anything was going to give. Taijuan, they send him back out there for the 6th inning, a decision that I really didn't like because he barely made it out of that 5th inning, immediately walks the first batter, gives up a double once again to De La Cruz before Seth Lugo comes into the game to try to bail him out. He gives up a sac fly. So it's 3-0 Marlins. They score another run in the 7th. And you're just thinking, here we go again. The Mets are going to lose. And at the same time, if you're watching the Braves game as I was, they're all game trailing to the Nationals 2-1. Josiah Gray has a great performance and they tie it. So they're thinking, all right, well, the Braves are going to win. The Mets are going to lose. They're going to be trailing by a game going into this big series. But Eduardo Escobar had other ideas. The performance that he just put together, I saw Matt Musico, who I used to work with the Mets Mirage, tweet this out, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. I even said this, I think, on a previous podcast where I just talked about how if he has a great September, he was worth the contract. And I think Musico just said in that game or in this month, he has been worth the contract. I think he's been worth the entire $20 million that he got paid just from this game, considering the circumstances and the way he put the team on his back to just rally. And there was so many at-bats tonight. We were watching guys just take strike 3, keep the bat on their shoulder. They just weren't aggressive. And Eduardo Escobar just has a mammoth swing to put one, into that left field corner. And we've seen so many home runs hit out that way. I think of the Todd Frazier home run, Wilmer Flores, so many big home runs. Something about left field in Citi Field is just the sign of a little bit of magic. And when he hit that home run, the Mets suddenly had a chance, but there was still a lot of baseball left. And you get to the 8th inning, and once again, it felt like the Mets were going to waste an opportunity. The Marlins were handing them base runners. Tanner Scott comes on. He walks Nimmo. He walks Pete Alonso. Francisco Lindor flew out, but then he walks Mark Canha, so the bases are juiced. They go to the pen. They get Richard Blyer, famous for the balks of the night prior, and Jeff McNeil pops out. So you're thinking, all right, 2 outs, bases loaded. Are the Mets going to come up short again? But luckily, they had the right guy at the plate because Eduardo Escobar steps up finds a hole the other way, hits a ground ball through it, and ties the ball game. And at that point, suddenly you're really starting to believe in this Mets team again. And uh, they end up sending it to extras. In the ninth inning, they had their opportunity. Tomas Nido doubled. Brandon Nimmo drew a walk. Both of that happening with one out. Pete Alonso struck out. Lindor grounded out. So you had to go to the bottom half, or you had to go to the 10th. And luckily for the Mets, the bullpen held up big time in this game. Once you got beyond Taijuan Walker, Seth Lugo did give up a run of his own. So not a perfect night for him, but he gave them 2 innings. Adam Ottavino, 1-2-3 inning, 2 strikeouts. Edwin Diaz strikes out the side in a perfect inning. But Drew Smith really stepped up as well. I was wondering, are they going to throw Edwin back out there? Haven't pitched 2 innings, but then do you potentially burn him? Do you really want him to go into that series against the Braves coming off a 2-inning appearance? I thought it was pretty courageous of Buck Showalter to go to Drew Smith in that spot, because Drew Smith has not thrown the ball well coming off the injured list. And boy, did he do a great job getting a couple big strikeouts, stranding the ghost runner. And that brought us to that 10th inning. And uh, once again, for Eduardo Escobar to be the guy 3 times in one night, you just don't see that often. And uh, it was just such a sensational performance. I would say that was the best game any Met has had all season. I know Pete Alonso has had some 5 RBI games. There's been other guys who have stepped up big time. But this was a must win for the Mets, in my opinion, because even if things were status quo, because the Braves lost to the Nationals. I want to talk about that game in this final segment because I watched pretty much every pitch of that one as well. But even with the fact that the pressure was off a little bit because the Nats had already walked off the Braves, so you knew you weren't going to go into this upcoming series trailing. To have been swept by the Marlins leading into that series, it just would have left a really bad taste in your mouth before you have an off day on Thursday. And then who knows what the weather's going to have in store for us this weekend. It is looking better. It is looking like Friday's a pretty good possibility to get a game in. And who knows, maybe even Saturday and Sunday things remain unchanged. They could just play a normal series considering the way the Hurricane's tracking. But if you had to go into that series having lost 2 to the Marlins, and then maybe you don't even play until Saturday or Sunday, it just could have been a really bad, swing of momentum for the Mets. And you're now able to take that in the other direction. You walk off the Marlins. You're feeling great. The Braves lose one. And once again, here the Mets are 1 game up in this division. They found a way all year long to hold on to this division lead. And now you have a little bit more confidence that they can do that to close out this season. But Eduardo Escobar deserves a whole segment for the month has had. And I will get to that in just a minute. But first, the summer's winding down. The nights are getting longer, but the breeze isn't the only thing that's getting stiff. That's right. This episode is sponsored by BlueChew. Guys, we all know that confidence can take you far in life. That's especially true in the bedroom, especially when it's time to step up to the plate. And that's where BlueChew comes in. It is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical professionals, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online, so no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. With Blue Chew, men everywhere are excited to see the postman because when your package has arrived, your package has arrived. So if you could benefit from some extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free. We use our promo code Locked On at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. Promo code Locked On to receive your first month for free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. On July 1st, Eduardo Escobar hit his 7th home run of the season. At the time, I tweeted out, all I want out of Escobar this season is 15 more of these. So I wanted 22 home runs out of Eduardo Escobar. Right now, he's sitting at 20. And the way he's swinging the bat, I would not be surprised if he got those 2 more homers and finished the year with 22. But even if he doesn't, he's earned the contract. I mean, what he's done this month, it's been remarkable. And you look at his month by month of the season, right? April, great. Okay. Got on base at a 378 clip, only had the one home run, but at least he was getting on base, had an 805 OPS. Then he had two of the worst months imaginable. Okay. You look at his May stats, a 212 hitter, 257 on base, 337 slugging, 594 OPS. Only had two home runs. June, he had three home runs, hit 207, 218 on base, 378 slugging, 596 OPS. July was somewhat decent for him. I mean, only a 220 average, 245 on base, but he did hit six home runs, started to at least give the Mets the power that they wanted when they signed him. You get to August, doesn't play too much, got hurt. 176 average, 222 on base, 235 slugging. But now, what he's done in September has just erased everything before that. At one point after the game, when he was struggling, he said, I'm going to give the Mets fans something to cheer about at some point this year. And he's done that in spades this month. 330 average, 379 on base, 638 slugging, OPS over 1,000, 8 home runs, 24 RBIs, just carrying them at different points. And this game, it is just the greatest example of that. 5 RBIs, hit the home run, 3 for 5. It's been a remarkable turnaround. I can't think of another Met that's had this type of a turnaround from the not even just the first half to the second half. I mean, you're talking about really not getting the guy you paid for the first 4 or 5 months of the season, and then all of a sudden he just turns it on and he's hitting from both sides of the plate all of a sudden. And as much as I've knocked him all year long, and trust me, I'll own that, because you want to go through the numbers again. I mean, he was not playing good baseball for the longest time. And I can tell you, as much as the eye test at times would tell you he's a decent defender at third, the stats would tell a different story. So, here I am trying to look at this team and trying to analyze what we're seeing every day. And I see Louis Guillorme and what he brings defensively. And I was like, look, it makes sense that at the trade deadline, the Mets were trying to set up a platoon at third base where they were letting Guillorme face all the right-handed pitching, and Escobar was going to be limited to the one side of the plate where he was actually swinging it well this year from the right side. But what he's done now, he's an everyday player again, no doubt about it. And I mean, outside of Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, I mean, right now, who else do you have more confidence in when they step into the box than Escobar? It's crazy how he has just turned his season on a dime, but it has been so needed. And you know what? That's what you get when you have a veteran player. As much as, I've been trying to hype up someone like Mark Vientos coming on, and you want to see him rise to his potential because he's a guy that could be a really big player for the Mets one day. This is why you sometimes ride the veterans. And this is why you sign these guys in the offseason, why you get a Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar, Starling Marte, because even though you have a guy like Canha who right now is going through it and he's struggling, they still have that track record from the back of their baseball card. They've played enough big league games that at some point they can figure it out. And Eduardo Escobar did something when he came off that injury list that just locked him in. And I mean, tonight it feels like he saved the Mets season, which again, it's hyperbolic because they're going to make the playoffs no matter what. And you go into a wild card round with Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, you feel great about your chances to win that wild card round. But also, it's a 3-game series. And I mean, we saw the Mets get swept by the Cubs, right? So anything can happen in a 3-game set. And if you did win that 3-game set, your rotations kind of flipped before you had to face the Dodgers. So the importance of winning this division is so paramount. To now be up 1 game heading into this series, it means everything to the Mets because it really felt like it was going to go in the opposite direction. And that's where we're going to close the show. The Nationals did the Mets a massive solid tonight, walking it off. Just a great game by them. And it really sets the stage for the Mets to have a special weekend out in Atlanta. We'll see what they can do, but I want to applaud the Nats in the next segment. So we'll get to that after a quick word from our sponsors. I'm sure there's a lot of Mets fans out there like me who have been really tuned in to the Atlanta Braves lately, whether it's just scoreboard watching or watching these games. It's 2 games a night now. You got to see what the Mets are doing. You got to see what the Braves are doing. And luckily, I got the 2 TVs set up in the living room. So I'm watching both. And I got to say, the Nationals just played such an awesome game against the Braves. Josiah Gray. I mean, this is a pitcher that the Nats are really clinging on to when it comes to their future. They need him to be good. He came over in the Max Scherzer trade last year, Max Scherzer trade, Turner trade, I should say. And he was great. I mean, he was commanding his pitches. He allowed just 2 hits, gave up a homer to Matt Olson. But other than that, was pretty spotless throughout the night. 2 walks, only had 2 strikeouts, but got his team through 6. The bullpen was pretty good for the Nats, but you get to this point where they're winning 2-1. Luke Voigt had a big RBI that gave them a lead in the 3rd inning, and it evaporates in the 8th because you have this play. And again, I really do think that the Nationals played a great game of baseball tonight defensively. I mean, there was guys making diving stops. I was loving that half of my 2 TV setup for the first, 3 hours of the night before Eduardo Escobar became Superman. You have this 8th inning where Carl Edwards Jr. comes on. He gives up a leadoff double. Ronald Acuna Jr., 2-0, gets a pitch to hit, doesn't do anything with it, flies out to right field. Then you have Dansby Swanson hits one. Really good play by the 3rd baseman. He's able to get the lead runner, but Swanson's able to advance during a pickle. So you have Swanson on second. Michael Harris is up. He gets an infield hit, but it was such a good play by the 2nd baseman. Luis Garcia makes a diving stop in one motion, tries to make the throw. Harris is just too fast. The throw ends up being in the dirt. The 1st baseman, Meneses, he can't field it cleanly. Swanson comes around, tie ball game, and you think, okay, here we go. Braves are going to win it because now that it's tied, the Nationals are just so inept offensively. There's no way they're going to score. Well, you fast forward, you go through the 8th, bottom 8, Nats do nothing. 9th inning, neither team scores. Big credit by Kyle Finnegan to come on and pitch a scoreless 9th. 10th inning rolls around, and the Nationals find a way to get through it. And once again, it was Finnegan. He pitched 2 innings, was really solid, and that put us in this situation where you get to simultaneous walk-off opportunities. You have the Nationals, bottom of the 10th. The ghost runner advances to 3rd on a bunt. So they're sitting there with the guy 90 feet away. The Mets are trying to score after Nito's double. Pete Alonso's up. I'm thinking we're going to watch 2 walk-offs at once, and I'm going to lose my mind. The Mets end up coming up short. But then I got the jolt of adrenaline that I never would have thought from the Nationals winning a baseball game as CJ Abrams gets his 3rd hit of the night, drives one in between the 2nd baseman and the 1st baseman into the outfield. Nationals win. Big time performance by them when the Mets needed it most. And now you go into this series against the Braves with a 1-game lead in this division. What does that mean here? Well, pretty simple. Win this series, you basically win the division. Because if the Mets win this series, they will be up by 2 games with the tiebreaker. So all of a sudden, right now, their magic number is 6, right? All you got to do at that point is win a game against the Nationals, and you're there. So that's where we are at this point. It always was going to come down to this series. And even if the Mets just win 1 in this upcoming series against the Braves, they take 1 of 3. They will own the tiebreaker. The Braves might pick up a game, but then you control your fate against the Nationals. And even though I just complimented the Nationals for playing a great game, I still think that the Marlins are a tougher matchup to close out the season for the Braves because they're going to have to go up against Pablo Lopez, Jesus Luzardo, and Sandy Alcantara. That's a tough trio to beat. So, and look, we just spent a couple episodes this week talking about the Mets not being able to beat bad teams. So we can't look at that series against the Nationals and say, hey, the Mets are definitely going to win. But you really want to control your destiny going into that last series. And what tonight did for the Mets is it takes a little bit of the pressure off. You still want to win this series against the Braves because if you do, you're overwhelming favorites to clinch the division when you play the Nats. But by at least winning tonight, all they got to do is make sure they grab one in Atlanta. They would have the tiebreaker and they would exit that series at least even in this division. Now, if they sweep the Braves, magic number 6. What does that mean? Well, when the Braves lose, that number goes down. When the Mets win, that number goes down. So if you sweep the Braves, shock the world a little bit, we could be celebrating in Atlanta on Sunday. Uh, I don't want to get too excited and imagine that's going to happen. The Braves are a great baseball team, and it'll be really tough to even win a game in that ballpark. And that's the reason they fought so much tooth and nail over these last couple days when it came to this hurricane to make sure those games were played in Atlanta. And the weather appears to have cooperated with them at this point, knock on wood, because you never know with Mother Nature. Right now, it's looking like what, a 24% chance to rain on Friday, somewhere near 50-60% chance on Saturday, Sunday looking pretty clear. We'll see what ends up happening with all the rain. My dad and I are going to be braving some bad weather probably on the road tomorrow, trying to get as close to Atlanta as we can without driving directly through this storm because we got tickets to all 3 games. But we're feeling pretty good about where the Mets are after tonight than where we thought they were going to be like 2 hours ago. And that is how baseball continues to be the best sport and the worst sport at the same time, because that swing of emotions can be so drastic. But I got to say, I feel so much better than I did last night. And again, even just 120 minutes ago. What a performance by Eduardo Escobar. Thank you to the Nationals for coming through. Now here it is. Mets versus Braves on the show tomorrow, previewing the biggest series of the season. I'll also be putting a bow on the minor league season for a Friday Farm Report. We'll go through some stats, some of the big takeaways we can have from the farm system. But as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.